Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. On today's episode of me talking about stuff and things, I am going to be going over season 2 episode 3 of Last One Standing. Before I continue, link below are some surveys you can fill out. There's a Last One Standing survey where survivalists who haven't been on Last One Standing can be voted for. And there's also the Largados y Pelados Excel survey where you can vote for survivalists from Largados y Pelados you would like to see come back for an Excel, and hopefully producers will pay attention when I post the results, but we shall see. Anyway, moving on to the episode. At the end of the previous episode, on day 9, the survivalists are given a note that says they must make an axe to fell a tree, and the 4th placing team will face elimination. And so for the next bit of the episode, we cut to each of the teams building their axes. Darrin comes alive in this episode because he is a flint napper and he talks about the different techniques that he uses to make the axe and the handle, and they have very sturdy axes on Team Darrin. Team Dan wants to focus on the handle of the axe, so you just have to secure a rock to it and just beat the heck out of the tree. And Fernando also wants to make a good axe that even if it breaks, they can repair it. And he's also a fireman, so that really helps them out in the challenge because he has experience using axes and he talks about finding a rhythm. And Trish is not as, oh, let's just beat the crap out of the tree. She's more of, let's take it nice and easy and just build a decent enough axe. And she and Dan butt heads over the type of axes they want to make. So it'll be interesting to see if an argument comes from that, but there is some tension. So, storyline, hooray, drama. And then team Gary, Lindsey, and Danny, they're making their axes. And there's also the point of Danny hasn't been consuming a lot of calories because Danny is vegetarian, because we have to get that storyline point so we can underestimate Danny, I guess. And then we have team Jeff and Patrick, who Jeff and Patrick are still butting heads, blaming each other for the failures in the egg challenge. So it'll be interesting to see if they'll be able to come together with their axes and not place 4th in this challenge. And so after the axes are made and day 10 arrives, we have the challenge where they must find the tree with the ropes and then cut it down. And even though Darrin's team has the best axes, Dan's team has the most force. They are using as much energy as they could to cut down this tree. And unfortunately, Dan and Fernando's axes break, but luckily Trish's axe, although it's a little bit more fragile than the other two, it comes in handy. And Fernando's firefighter skills come in handy, and also Dan's brute force comes in handy. And Dan's team is first and they win a Pulaski, but unfortunately Dan is very enthusiastic and he accidentally grabs part of the blade and cuts his finger and requires 6 stitches, but his team wins and everything is fine. And then in second place is Kai, Darrin, and Bulent. And then in third place is Patrick and Jeff. They managed to avoid elimination. And unfortunately, that means that Gary, Danny, and Lindsey are all up for elimination. And so on day 11, their elimination challenge is later in the day. But before that, we see the different camps trying to survive and get food. Fernando and Trish go in and get a bunch of fish for Dan and themselves. They talk about they caught a lot of food, so maybe they should share, so they leave some fish out for Kai, Darrin, and Bulent. And in the meantime, Kai, Darrin, and Bulent catch a catfish and are able to have a big feast. And when they come back to their boma, they find the extra fish from Trish, Fernando, and Dan, and decide to return them. And Darrin and Kai voted returning the fish, while Bulent was, or at least seemed, a little upset about giving the fish back because food is food to him. But Kai and Darrin didn't want to owe the other camp anything, so they just decided to give it back. So that's interesting. And also, before Trish's camp gives the fish, Trish talks about how she would rather not give over the fish, since Kai, Darrin, and Bülent kind of owe their team for the bows and stuff like that, or they will give them some of the food that they get if they get something with the bow and arrow. So Trish is saying, why are we giving them more food when they already will owe us food for the bow and arrow giving? But, you know, what can you do? We move on to the elimination challenge between Gary, Danny, and Lindsey, where they have to make a tripod with a J-hook to hold a pot of water. And they have to boil said water, but then they have to take the J-hook off, put the pot on the ground, and then pick the J-hook back up and put it back on their tripod without the water spilling. So it's a very tense elimination challenge, and Gary gets his done pretty quickly. And so it's Danny and Lindsey neck and neck, and there's a point where Lindsey almost gets her J-hook back on her tripod, but unfortunately the pot slips on the J-hook and the water falls, and then her tripod falls, and then while she's trying to get it back up, Danny manages to successfully take the J-hook off and put it back on. And so after a long time of them going neck and neck, Danny is safe from elimination, and unfortunately Lindsey goes home. That's right, Lindsey is the fourth individual to go home from this challenge. We have 10 survivalists remaining. And next week, it seems that someone is going to be evacuated from the challenge, it seems, due to the heat. So that's why they brought up the heat on this episode a lot, is because next episode, there are some individuals that are out in the sun, and one of them probably has to be evacuated. So that'll be interesting to see. And with that, that is the end of the episode and the end of the recap. Lindsey went home. Dan, Trish, and Fernando went to Pulaski, but Dan got injured. Their fish gift was denied, but Bülent kind of isn't happy about it. And according to the previews, we see Fernando and Patrick sitting in a moment together, so maybe after the reward challenge of that episode, the teams will get swapped up a little bit. Or there's an elimination challenge and they get swapped up. But I think that teams may be getting swapped up, or Fernando and Patrick just happen to be in the same boma. And for the next few people that I think are going home, I know for a fact that we see Kai, Fernando, and Dan doing a fire-related challenge. There's the scene where Jeff and Patrick are running at something. Gary has the Impala on his back at one point, so maybe that's a reward from a reward challenge. Danny makes it to the nighttime elimination challenge. So I think the next few that may be going are unfortunately Bülent, Trish, and Darrin. And so after that, we shall see what happens. But with that, that is the end of the recap. I hope you all enjoyed. Please like, comment nice things, and subscribe. And click the next video if it's mine. I hope you all have a wonderful day. Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.